Mr. Cafaro, we are delighted to have you this morning. We are pleased that you are cooperating and we welcome your testimony, so why don't you proceed? Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. My name is Vincent Cafaro, known to my friends as the Fish. 36 years ago, when I was 17 years old, a kid in New York City, I got pinched or busted for possession of 2 ounces of junk, meaning narcotics. Mr. Cafaro, if you want to pull that mic down a little bit, I think it might be easier. Just take your time now. We have got plenty of time. You have got all the time you need, just take your time as you present your statement. Yes, sir. My grandparents went to Fat Tony Salerno, at the time a soldier in the Genovese family or Brigada, for help. Fat Tony took me aside and gave me some advice. Leave the junk alone. If you need money, go out and steal. 6 or 7 years later, around 1958, Fat Tony came to me and asked me if I wanted to work for him in a numbers office. I said yes, and stayed with Fat Tony for the next 25 years. In the end, Fat Tony had become in many ways like a father to me. In 1986, the federal government charged Tony, myself, and 14 others, Amico Nostra, for, among other things, racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy. Tony and the others are now awaiting a jury verdict on those charges in New York City. Shortly after the indictment was returned, I began cooperating with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. I agreed to and did wear a wire for the FBI for 5 months in New York City. In October 1987, for a number of reasons, including concern for my family, I informed the prosecutor's office that I no longer wished to cooperate and was placed in custody to await trial. I am providing this statement independently of any agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office. My case and all the charges against me remain pending. I have not been given any immunity by the federal government or by this subcommittee. In 1974, I got straightened out. In other words, I became a made member of the Genovese family or the Brigada, a true amico nostra. This is not something that you ask for. It is something that you are offered by the family if they feel you are worthy. Our family, or our Brigada, has approximately 400 members with a definite hierarchy: a boss, an underboss, and a consigliere, followed by 14 capo regimes. Each capo regime has a crew of at least 8. The boss of the Genovese family is Vincent Gigandi, also known as Chin. Bobby Mana Louis Mana is the consigliere. Until his death in April 1987, Sammy Santora was the underboss of our Brigada. Beginning in the early 1980s, Fat Tony Salerno was generally recognized on the streets as the boss of the Genovese family. In fact, for years Fat Tony reported back to Philip Lombardo, also known as Ben or Benny Squint. In the 1960s, when Vito Genovese went to jail, he had turned over control of our brigade to Lombardo. Lombardo wanted to stay in the background and keep the heat off himself. So over the years, Tommy Ryan, then Eli Zaccardi, then Funzi Thierry, and finally Fat Tony, fronted as the bosses of the family while Lombardo controlled things from the background. In 1981, Fat Tony had a stroke and was pulled down by Lombardo, Vincent Chin Gigandi, Mana, and Santora. Lombardo was also in poor health and retired. Could I stop you right there? What do you mean by pulled down? In other words, he was not the boss anymore. He was taken down. It does not mean he was killed, or anything like that, or hurt, or harmed. No, he was just taken down. He was not a boss any longer. Thank you. Gigandi became the boss behind the scenes with Santora as the underboss and Mana as the consigliere. Gigandi also allowed Fat Tony to continue to front as the boss, letting the other families believe, as recently as 1984, that Fat Tony still controlled our Brigada. Fat Tony continued to represent the family by sitting on the commission and in meeting representatives of the other families. In fact, Fat Tony conferred with Chin on any major matters affecting the family. Chin attended one commission meeting but preferred that Fat Tony go to these meetings. I remember the day I became a member of the Genovese family. Tony Salerno had told me and Patty Jerome to meet him in Buccaloo one morning. When we arrived, Buccaloo took me to the A Quartile restaurant on Mulberry Street, where we met with Funzi Thierry, the Brugade's underboss, and Fat Tony, who at that time was the consigliere. I knew what I was there for when I saw a gun, a knife, a pin, alcohol, and tissue laying out on the table. Funzi asked me if I wanted to become a member of the family. He said I could accept or not accept, and there would be no hard feelings. But he also said, once you accept, you belong to us. We come first. Your family and home come second. We come first, no matter what. And I accepted. Funzy then showed me the gun and the knife, and says, "This is the gun and the knife, you live with the gun and die by the knife." He told me that Fat Tony had sponsored me, and gave me a piece of paper to let burn in my hand while I took the oath. If I betray the Cosa Nostra, I shall burn like this paper. He then pricked my trigger finger with the pin and told me, "Now you are Amico Nostra, you have been born over again. Now you are a man, you belong to us." From that point on, I was Amico Nostra, a soldier in the Genovese family, the most powerful mob family or brigade in New York City, and, for that matter, in the United States. There were certain rules that all Amico Nostra lived by. No fooling around with another Amico Nostra's wife. No junk, no dealing with pornography or government bonds, and never talking about this thing to anyone but another Amico Nostra. Would you explain what you mean by no junk? It is narcotics. Narcotics. Thank you. We were a very disciplined organization. A soldier had to check in at least once a week with his capo regime. A soldier could not make a score, meaning any illegal business, without the approval of his capo. If he wanted to, a capo regime could demand 10% of the profits made by his soldiers on a score. A soldier could not even carry a gun without first getting approval from his capo. Most important, we knew never to ask questions about another Amico Nostra's business unless it was also our business. La Cosa Nostra enforces its rules through murder, so we even have rules about who could or could not be murdered, or as we say on the streets, clipped, whacked, or hurt. First of all, killings were mandatory for certain offenses. Messing around with another Amico Nostra's wife or family, dealing in junk, ratting, refusing to go on a hit if asked, knowingly killing a cop or other law enforcement agent. Also, if someone you sponsored ratted, you would be killed as being responsible for his actions. No killing or hit could take place without the approval of the hierarchy of your family. The first step in getting that approval was to take your beef to your capo, who in turn gets approval for the hit from the conciliary and the underboss. Ultimately, no hit could go down without the approval of the boss. If the boss okays the hit, the capo assigns it to you to be carried out. You decide who, if anyone, from your own regime, will help you do the job. If the hit is against a member of another family, your boss will take the beef to the boss of that family. If he agrees, members of that family will carry out the hit. If he disagrees, and the hit takes place anyway, a war may result. As for me, I was never asked to carry out a hit. I never had to kill anyone. This was because Fat Tony always looked out for me. It was like a father and son relationship. However, I knew that if I was ever asked, I would have to kill or be killed. What I did for our family was to run the numbers business in West Harlem from about 110th Street to 153rd Street. I had about 72 controllers working under me. We had plenty of willing customers. We paid 6 to 1. The New York lottery only paid 5 to 1. At my peak, I was grossing about $80,000 per day with a net of about $65,000 before payouts. I had some bad years, but in a good year I could make as much as $2 million or more. Whatever money I took, I split 50 to 50 with Fat Tony. Later I expanded my business from numbers into sports betting. My family made a lot of money from gambling and the numbers rackets. We got our money from gambling, but our real power, our real strength came from the unions. With the unions behind us, we could shut down the city, or the country for that matter, if we needed to get our way. Our brigade controlled a number of different unions, some of which I personally dealt with, some of which I knew about from other Amico Nostras. In some cases we got money from our dealings with the unions, in some cases we got favors such as jobs for friends and relatives, but more importantly, in all cases we got power over every businessman in New York. With the unions behind us, we could make or break the construction industry, the garment business, the docks, to name but a few. For example, Bobby Robert Rao was a union official with a local of hotel workers and bartenders union, hotel, restaurant employees, AFL-CIO production, service and sales district council. Bobby and his union belonged to our brigade. Every month, Bobby would bring over anywhere from a $1,000 to $2,000 form to give to Fat Tony, which I would split with Fat Tony. At Christmas, Bobby would bring over $25,000 for me to give to Fat Tony. Fat Tony would tell me how to split the money up half, or $12,500 to Ben Lombardo, who, at the time, was the boss of our family behind Tony, Another $6,500 to Tony Provenzano or Tony Pro, a family member who controlled Teamstall's local 560, and the remainder to be split between Fat Tony and myself. To be continued.